Newport News Police Department's sixth series in the 21st Century Policing Conversations. My name is Lieutenant Jerry Hairston,
And I'm Sergeant Thomas Peregrine.
and we are here to answer your questions in reference to internal affairs. So if you're out there, we'd love for you to start sending us some questions to help us help you.
And in the meantime, I guess we can kind of just rehash the points that we did, the talking points we did previously during our video session about this. We're just going to discuss how complaints are taken and how they are investigated here in the Newport News Police Department, specifically the ones that we do in the Internal Affairs Division. Just to reiterate and remind everyone that there's different ways that you guys can file those complaints. Obviously, you can go online to nnva.gov /police, and on there you can click on citizen complaints on the left navigation bar. You can call our office directly at 928-4325. And you can also come down personally to the police department and speak with someone at the front desk. And if you have a complaint, they'll hand you a form to fill out and they'll notify us. And if there's somebody available from our office, we'll come down there and speak to you personally about it. We can get more into that later.
And one thing I like to say with the internal affairs, we do investigate our officers and their officers and the conduct of officers. And the one thing that we look at that we see a lot of, and it's not just happening here in Newport News, it happens around the world, and it's the conduct of officers, and mainly about their demeanor and what they say and what they do. And anytime that we have an investigation or a situation that we have to look at, we definitely do a thorough investigation. And we're not here to play favorites or anything like that, but we're here to investigate any type of complaint. And if the complaint is in reference to officers and how they talk to you or what they've done or anything like that, we need to hear that, because that only makes us better as we strive for transparency and want to do the best and be the best that we can be. So if you have had any situations like that where you felt that you were being talked to in a bad way by an officer, or something has happened where it caused you to think that the police aren't doing what they're supposed to do, by all means, as Sergeant Peregrine stated, you can go ahead and file a report, and we would definitely look into it. Hello, Annie. How you doing?
Hello. And just speaking from my experience over here, we do the majority of complaints I usually take stem off of police interactions during like traffic stops. What I do kind of want to make sure that I emphasize is there's two types of complaints that we usually going to take with that, and it's going to usually be something that's procedural, such as someone believes that their rights were violated or that the officer did something inappropriate, or the other form of complaint would be for the demeanor, like Lieutenant Harrison was saying. They just didn't feel that the officer treated them right or didn't talk to them in the right manner. The one thing that we do not investigate is basically if someone's going to complain and argue about the ticket that they received. That's something that's left up to the courts, and you're more than welcome to, when an officer is explaining to you the procedures of that, that you do have a date in court that you can argue if you feel that there was something other than what we investigated arises from those traffic stops. The most common one that I've been coming into recently a lot is if an officer stops a vehicle and during the course of that traffic stop that they're writing a ticket, that another officer shows up with a canine, and then that officer will walk the canine around the dog and take a sniff. And depending on the nature of that, like an officer may ask the person to step out of the vehicle if they detect the odor of narcotics. A lot of the questions that I get with that is that legal? I will try to explain this as best as I can that yes, there are certain parameters that allow for us to have that resource. So that's the whole purpose of us having a drug canine, is to be utilized in those kind of situations. A lot of people will say, well, the officer can't call a canine until they actually smell something. That's not the case. If an officer can smell what they believe to be narcotics, then they're going to be able to address that accordingly without having a canine. A canine is usually used to detect what an officer cannot detect. And that's usually explained to you. It should be explained to you by the canine officer or by the officer who who initially stopped you for whatever traffic infraction. They'll usually do that and explain it to you there on scene how the process works.
And another thing that we find is that a lot of people don't realize or they don't care, but we have body cameras, and that captures a lot about what's going on, the interaction that we have with the citizens. And it's so important that, first of all, we want you all to know, but we want the officers also to realize that camera is being worn for their protection and yours. A lot of times we have frivolous complaints that come in where they'll say, a citizen will say that an officer said or did this, and we review each body cam that comes in, and we'll review the information or the video, and we'll see what the citizen said or even what the officer said. If it's not true, it's not true. And like I said, we do thorough investigations, and it's very important that we want citizens to talk to us. We want citizens to know that we're trying to be transparent, and that's what these cameras do. We get a chance to review them, see if our officers are doing anything wrong, and if they are doing something wrong, then we address it. And if we need to correct it in a disciplinary manner, we will. And sometimes we have citizens that, like I said, they don't like the police, and they'll say and do some things that aren't the truth. So that way, that's why I said the cameras will come in handy, or they do come in handy sometimes when we're dealing with individuals.
And just kind of going back to the process of taking the complaints, so I'll kind of break it down. If you do a walk-in to the police department during regular office hours, we would try to do our best, if we have an available investigator, to come down to actually make that initial contact with you. Usually, if that's the case, if it's something that we can kind of handle in a swift manner, depending on the nature of your complaint, we usually try to either clear it up right then and there with you, sometime within that day, or if it takes a little longer, then, if we have to conduct an investigation, regardless, at some point you will get notification on the outcome of that investigation. It can be done either but through phone, like if I'm going to call you to let you know the disposition of it, and if you had any questions for me, I can answer them for you. Or if we're not able to get a hold of you by the phone, usually we would send a letter to your mailing address, and it would have the disposition of the complaint, and also it would have a phone number to contact if you did have any questions. If you go online to file a complaint, typically we'll get that notification while we're in the office. So if you do it, you could do that 24 hours a day, but keep in mind that we would be working our regular office hours. So if you file it at night, we may get to it the next morning. On that complaint form, there's a spot on the bottom of it that it asks, do you wish to be notified or contacted? And you would leave a phone number and we would contact you. In some cases, if you just want to report something but you don't want to be notified, like if you want to remain anonymous but you have information, then you can feel free to put that in there, and where it says, would you like to be notified, you'd put no. If you call down to the Internal Affairs office directly to make a complaint, you probably wind up speaking with our office assistant, and she would basically field the information from your phone call, and then at that point, once she's received all the information from you, she would then pass it over to Lieutenant Harrison, who would then assign it to one of the investigators that we have in there, and then one of us would follow up with you as well. But in every case, if you file a complaint, whichever way you do, you will be formally contacted, the complaint will be investigated, it will be logged into our system, and you will receive a disposition at the end of that investigation.
And that's another thing that's important. And to let you all know, if you file a complaint, it will be looked into. A lot of people think that if we have a complaint and we don't believe it or anything like that, that we just throw it to the side. No, every complaint gets investigated, and everybody that complains will get a phone call from one of the investigators or myself, and we'll talk about it. And like I said, we'll look into the complaint, what happens in investigation, and we'll go from there.
So Daniel, I see your question.
Hey, Danny.
That's a tricky question because it depends on what type of false reporting is going on. If the false reporting results in like a criminal report on file, then there could be charges that are related and associated with that. If it's just you're calling down to internal affairs to file a complaint on someone and you're providing false information to us, usually what we'll do is we're going to investigate it, and if it comes to be determined that we did receive false information, you're going to be notified about that. We're going to tell you if the information you provided is false. And going back to what Lieutenant Harrison was saying with the Axon body camera, a lot of times those are the resources that we are using in today's day and age with the way we investigate things. You know, once upon a time we didn't have that capability when we didn't have that kind of technology, but in today's day and age, we look at that video and we can tell whether or not an incident occurred the way that it is being reported to us through the manner of as a complaint. So I hope that kind of answers your question. If not, just you can shoot up a updated message and we can try to address it from that point. And I think I saw one earlier, and there where someone was just talking about the body cameras, how great they are. And yes, they are. I can tell you, for the Newport News Police Department, that it is valuable. Every officer is issued one, and every officer follows the policy and procedures when interacting with the public that they're going to have them on. In the a chance that they do not, then we do investigate that as well, because that is part of our policies and procedures here. We do enforce that.
And with the body cam, like I said, a lot of times we have to, dealing with citizens, we have some citizens that in reference to it that we have to arrest. And sometimes, we roll into the use of force. And once again, the body cams become extremely important in that because I'm looking at these responses while I'm talking. But body cams, again, like I said, are very, very important. And when we have to use force on people, a lot of people that see a police officer taking somebody down to the ground or tasing them or anything like that, one thing that we've realized, we have body cams and so do the citizens. The citizens have their phones out anytime that they are interacting with us, and that's a good thing. And you should not be scared or anything like that if an officer is talking to you and you see that they have their body cam on. That is like I said, it's good for them. It's good for the citizens to have that. So we're trying to be the best that we can be and trying to be transparent with the community. You see from across the country, we're dealing with some difficult times right now. So, when we have to deal with officers and mistakes that officers have made, we're being honest. We do that, and we don't, pick sides or anything like that. We would love for every officer to come into our office and everything's good, but sometimes it's not like that. We've had to terminate officers. We give everything to the chief of police once we do an investigation, and based on the investigation and witnesses and different things like that, we get in the area of, like I say, we give everything to the chief, and the chief makes a decision on whether or not that we're able to keep this person or not, whether we discipline this person, and is it a training issue that we're going through or that the person is going through. Several things go on. And like I said previously, internal affairs, if you look on television, the Rat Squad, things of that nature, that's not how it is. It's 2020. Is that correct? 2020? 2020? Yeah. It's one of those. We're here. But, a lot of times you see on television, you talk about internal affairs, and you get the gentleman who comes up with the tie and the brown shoes and things of that nature, and they're just stoic, and, that's not how it is. We sit down and we have conversations with people. Even though we're doing investigations, we're not there slamming people or talking bad to them or anything, or putting them under the bright lights like you see on television. We're sitting there, we're talking to them, we're having a conversation. And that's definitely better than coming to rough at somebody, because that's not how we are. And, you get more being kind to somebody and understanding what's going on than going out there and just trying to dog somebody out. Can't do that and win. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to win.
And Lieutenant kind of said it earlier, but I'll kind of emphasize on that. So we in the Internal Affairs Division, we report directly to the chief. As an investigator, I report to Lieutenant Harrison here, but basically everything we do gets routed directly to the chief. If we get a complaint that we investigate, it's being presented to him. So basically, every investigation that we do, we're going to conduct it thoroughly, have all the questions answered, and it's presented to the chief prior to sending out any disposition letters. To touch a little bit back on what Lieutenant Harrison said too with the use of force, same thing goes with the use of force. I know we've had one of these videos in the past that Chief Drew did with the Use of Force Review Board, but to take the time out to kind of reiterate on that, that is a really useful tool that we here have at the department. I've been a part of internal affairs from almost the ground up when we started that, and I've seen how it's kind of morphed into what we have as it is today. It's definitely a great tool that we have. And once talking about body camera videos, those come into play very, very importantly with the use of force investigations that we do. Every use of force gets investigated. Once a month, we present the previous month's cases. There's been cases that I presented to the Use of Force Review Board that previously a bystanding citizen had caught or captured a portion of that use of force on a cell phone video, and it's been released on social media, YouTube, and just only part of that video had been released. And then when presenting this to the Use of Force Review Board, which consists of citizens, I've had it in the past where a citizen has actually told me that they actually saw a video pertaining to the use of force we presented, but they were able to see more of the actual use of force from the angle that we showed it at with the body camera videos of the officers involved. And keeping that in mind, our videos are unedited. They are clipped to show the actual use of force, and we're also showing de-escalation techniques from the officers prior to the use of force and after the use of force. But they are clipped because some videos are just they're extremely long. Like we can have an officer's interaction could be about an hour, and the use of force in that portion is probably about like a minute or two. And also you add in the de-escalation prior to and after. We're looking at maybe a 5-minute video I've trimmed it down to, but it is unedited. I mean, you'll see language on both sides, a lot with the citizens, some with officers, and you know, it's understandable. You know, we're all human here. But it is very valuable, and I'm just really harping on how we do thoroughly investigate everything by reviewing that body camera video. It's very important that we have that tool here on the department.
And I noticed one of the responses here, somebody said that they would like to see people do more ride-alongs with the police, and I think that's very good because a lot of times people forget that we're human. We're not machines. We have families. We have crises just like everybody else. And we leave our families and come and help everybody else. So one thing that I like is the fact that we do have the ride-along program because, gosh, I'm sorry. Because when people do a ride-along, they actually see what police officers deal with and deal with the citizens. So that's very important.
I'm laughing at Daniel's comment.
Yeah, that got me too.
But yeah, back to the ride-alongs. I would tell you, just from my point of view, prior to me getting into law enforcement, I actually did 2 ride-alongs. I did one as part of one of my college courses that I took, and that was with Virginia Beach Police Department. And then the second one I took, obviously, was the one that's required during the application process to become a Newport News police officer. And I would tell you, yes, it is very beneficial because the first one I did while I was in college with Virginia Beach Police is the one that actually kind of leaned me more towards wanting to go into this field and do something in this manner. Because prior to then, I didn't have a thought in my mind of becoming a police officer. So it is highly encouraged, whether it's for that purpose or not. It does open a citizen's eyes to understanding like how police work really is done. I know an average citizen probably relies a lot on what they see on the news or watching police procedural shows like Law and Order or something, but yes, but definitely ride-alongs as a citizen of the Newport News, or as if you own a business in the city of Newport News, you actually qualify to do a ride-along with Newport News Police, as pending that you pass the background checks that are required. And if you have any questions on that, obviously. You can come on down, or you can look at it on the website, or you can come on down in person to police headquarters. It's just a form you would fill out if you're interested.
Okay. One thing that, like I said, that with the Internal Affairs Division, a lot of times, like I said earlier, we were talking about the use of force. sometimes we have to deal with officers who use excessive force. Now, that becomes a criminal matter. And when that becomes a criminal matter, we really don't investigate that. That will be decided by the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. And different things will happen to the officer, and it's not a good thing. We try to teach every officer as far as training them properly what to say, what to do. But sometimes you have officers who just forget that they're the police and they say things or do things that just aren't right. And we're not going to tolerate it. I know Chief Drew doesn't tolerate it at all. And when it comes to our office to investigate things like that, and if something is escalating, then we're there to, get involved and say to the chief, hey, I think this person, I know before we had one guy, and I told the chief, if we don't get rid of this guy, we are going to be on CNN. And this guy just showed a progression of different bad attributes that we don't tolerate. And he ended up leaving before he was terminated. But things like that, we don't tolerate that. We can't, because we are a professional organization. We're professional in our duties as police officers. I've been here a number of years, and I don't know how much longer I'm gonna be here, but I'm gonna be here. But I've enjoyed it my entire time here, and I love this place. And like I said, back to our talking on internal affairs, it's not a bad place to be. So let's look over here and see what else we can talk about.
Yeah, I was just about to answer Kayla's question, so I'm not quite sure if you mean that you're actually in the hiring process here, but yes, if you're in the hiring process, then part of that process would include you doing a ride along with an officer from any one of the precincts and any one of the shifts. Hope that answers your question. Taking it back to what Lieutenant Harrison was just talking about with excessive force, I will tell you, I don't really have that experience here with an excessive force investigation, which is actually a good thing. I've been in internal affairs for almost 2 years now, and I have not yet had to investigate or identify a specific incident that involved excessive use of force. Every use of force that we've had has been able to be presented to the Use of Force Review Board. Excessive force does not get presented to the Use of Force Review Board, just like Lieutenant was saying. We would do a very generalized investigation to determine, in fact, that yes, excessive force was used, and then we would turn it over to be looked at in a criminal manner with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. But once again, like I would say, I think it's just speaking on the quality of our work here in Newport News Police Department, and I'll knock on some wood, but I have yet to come across any incident involving an excessive use of force.
Okay, let's see what else we can discuss.
So on here, I know we had a bullet point that says department receives a complaint from a citizen on potential officer misconduct. Now, kind of speaking quite frankly, that does happen, not very often, but every once in a while we may get an allegation of misconduct that leads to a full-blown administrative investigation, and it's going to get handled just as any other of our investigations would. We look at the allegations, we look at the facts, we do a proper and thorough investigation to determine that not all allegations of misconduct are substantiated. The majority of them are not going to be substantiated, or even the other classifications we have are unfounded and exonerated, just depending on the nature of it. Unfounded would be going back to one of the comments we had earlier, like if a person's like providing false information during a complaint, that we would generally file that one as unfounded, and we do get quite a few of those. The exonerated would be where I gave the example earlier, that if someone wants to argue like, oh, they got pulled over, they got a ticket, they don't think they were speeding, or no, they did stop at the stop sign, the officer didn't see that. That's not a complaint, but it would be exonerated because the action did actually happen. The officer did stop that person. The officer did issue them a summons, but it was lawful. There was nothing that we determined that was unlawful with that. Substantiated obviously would mean that we found that the complaint was valid, and whatever form of discipline action was taken against the employee, that's typically what happens. The other classification we have would be unsubstantiated, where there's just not enough information to go either way. That's very seldomly used nowadays. I think that category was probably used a lot more when we didn't have body camera, because a lot of the complaints would just be like the he said, she said. Like a citizen would say, well, the officer said this to me. You ask the officer, and then the officer says, I didn't say that. And then it just becomes difficult, because at the same time, we want to have trust in our employees here. And one of the things we do look at is a pattern. And if I have and I can imagine in those days without having body camera video, or even sometimes nowadays, if we have a body camera malfunction, we just don't have it. The officers' history here with the department gives them credit. If I go back and I look into this officer's history and I find that we don't have any pattern established of like a demeanor, then it's going to go kind of in favor of them, but we would still classify that as unsubstantiated because we couldn't say one way or the other, but there would be no discipline taken against the officer. But like I said, I think that's a little older disposition, because nowadays we rarely have to use that with the technology that we have now. A lot of it's going to either be substantiated, unfounded, or exonerated.
I'm looking at this question: what is the best part of your job and the worst in your experience? And I think the best part of my job is, well, I'm the best part of your job.
Of course.
No, I'll tell you.
Lieutenant sings "God Bless America" every morning when we come into work. Daniel.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, the best part is being with an organization that is professional and you get along with people. Of course, it's a family. One thing I learned here, this job, you can't take it home with you all the time. You cannot take it home with you. So you have to, reach out and do some other things. But, the people in the organization make the organization, and it makes you, thanks, Danny. And it makes you want to be part of this team, because that's what we are, a team. Whether we're in internal affairs, whether you're in homicide or any other investigative bureau, this is, thank you. This is one of the best jobs you can have. It can take you sometimes, I tell you. And in the question, she says, what's the worst part? And me personally, the worst part is having to deal with children that have been victimized. That would be mine. So
Kayla, I saw what you said on there. Good luck to you through the process. I'm sure that if you had any questions about that process, we got plenty of people here on the department that'd be able to help assist you with that. Vonnie, I'll kind of answer my side of that. I know Lieutenant just answered your question. So the best part of my job is currently where I'm assigned with internal affairs. I mean, the best part is just kind of, for me, it's doing the use of force presentations. I really love doing it. I love seeing the citizens' reactions when they come in and we present, because it's very informative to the community. I like to take away the negative stigma you hear when you hear the phrase use of force, and you hear it on the news everywhere nowadays. And I've talked to the chief about this. I've talked to the lieutenant. When you hear the word use of force, a common citizen thinks police brutality. And that is not the case. Over here, use of force is we are reporting any incident that called for more force than basic handcuffing that was needed to place a person in handcuffs. This physical, taser, pepper spray, however it may be. But when you start talking about police brutality, that would be excessive force. But I think there's a common misconception that people hear use of force and think of brutality. So that's probably the part of the job that I enjoy. The part that I don't enjoy, I'll be quite frank, it's our job is literally being a complaint taker. But I do feel that with that being said, every complaint that I get, I treat 100%. I'm talking to the citizen. I'm going to make sure that they fully understand. And a lot of the complaints that we take do not amount to an actual complaint, like a substantiated complaint. But I do want to remind you guys from the last time I said this on the video, was every complaint does get entered into the system initially. So if I take a complaint, and even if I've looked into it and realized that it's not going to be substantiated, it's unfounded, it still gets entered in. Because number one, we're going to have the interaction with a citizen, and I explain to the citizens every time that if they were to call back months from now, and then they were to ask, I filed a complaint months ago, I just want to know what's the status, or however it may be, that complaint's going to be in our system. It's not going to be where we don't know where this complaint is. Every complaint gets taken, whether we determine it to be unfounded and exonerated, it still gets entered into the system. So back to the worst part of that is, the worst part is me being the bearer of bad news, because a lot of times, I have to stomach it, but I am going to do that. One thing I can guarantee, if I take a complaint from you, you're going to get a call from me directly. I'm going to talk to you face to face, and I'm going to explain to you didn't have a complaint, explain to you why, and try my best so that you have that understanding and that you walk away at least a little more educated. Like if it was just a misconception, miscommunication, that at least you can walk away with that. Sometimes the citizens aren't too happy, but at the end of the day, that's what I do, is just make sure that I am at least making that attempt to make them aware of the nature of that complaint.
Right. And one last thing I like to say, when we talk about the Use of Force Review Board, I know the chief has probably been on here previously talking about it. One great thing is we have citizens that are involved in this who make determinations on whether the use of force is within policy, not within policy. Does it require more training of something for the officer to do better? We have 4 citizens that sit on the Use of Force Review Board along with 4 officers, and you can't beat that, because that's when you have the citizens coming into play, coming in to make a decision and assisting us. And this is where, like I said, we're trying to be transparent, and we want these citizens to realize they are part of our team. So once again, we thank you all for joining us, and we wish you all the best of holiday season as we're coming up on Thanksgiving and the Christmas time. So thank you all for visiting with us this afternoon.
Yeah,
Again,
thank you for all the positive comments too.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Danny. And I'm Lieutenant Harrison.
I'm Sergeant Peregrine, and just a reminder, any questions you have, you can always call our office as well, 928-4325.
Thank you.